Hello, my name is Jacob Beaton. I'm the owner and operator of Copper Moon Communications. Today we're going to be talking about what communications is, what branding is, marketing, and social media. We're going to start by defining communications. What is communications? You probably hear this word a lot, but what does it actually mean? In its most basic form, communications is an exchange. For example, someone saying, "Hi, my name's Jeff," and someone responding and saying, "Hi Jeff, I'm Jacob." By definition, communication is an exchange of messages or information through speech, signals, writing, or behavior. Something really important that I want to point out right away is that communications is an exchange. Oftentimes, when communications companies like ours are hired, it's with the intent to just get a message out there, to try and influence someone's thinking, change their mind on something, or create a brand or brand response, which I'll talk about in this workshop. However, what often gets overlooked is that if we want to get someone to understand us, we need to be willing to listen to that person. And that's where the exchange comes in. And that's also where social media comes in really, really strongly. And I'll talk about that later in this presentation as well. There are many ways to communicate your message. So it's online, offline, in person, and so on. So if you're looking to accomplish your goals in life and in your work, you'll quickly learn that communications is very, very important. In fact, communications is essential to accomplishing your goals. So what I'd like to talk about now is how marketing and communication works in a nutshell. Normally, these concepts are taught over a period of months or at least weeks, and I'm going to try and do it in a few slides and try and blow your mind in this presentation. First of all, as I mentioned, communications is about goals. So if you have a goal, let's say you're trying to raise $1 million, you need a target audience. Basically, who's going to help you accomplish that goal, who has $1 million. Then you need to figure out what you say and do to motivate that person to give you $1 million. So this is communication in its very, very basic form. You have a goal, you have your people who will help you, your target audience, and you have your messages, what you can say or do to motivate that person to action. Now, you don't need to learn really complicated terms to learn communication. In fact, if you have children, you've already got some very good teachers. The fact is that children are amazing communicators. We're all born with this thinking and understanding built in, and somehow some of us unlearn it through school and through life. So let's look at an example of a child who wants a box of SpongeBob cereal. The child has learned that they can't just grab the box of cereal and walk out the store. They need you, the parent or grandparent, aunt or uncle, to buy the box of cereal. So they have their goal in mind. They want the box of cereal. They have their target audience. That's you. Then they have to figure out what they say or do in order to get you to buy the box of cereal so they can have it for breakfast. That is communications in action. You have a cute kid being very cute, saying, "I love you, Mom, Dad, Grandpa, Grandma, I'll do anything, I'll wash the dishes," delivering the right message so that you're convinced to buy the box of cereal. If you don't have kids, I just encourage you to, when you go grocery shopping, to pay attention to those with kids and see what kind of messages they deliver to their parents to try and get them to act, whether that be screaming on the floor, being really cute, making promises, trying to manipulate even. Kids are really great at this, and I love watching kids communicate. Branding. You've probably heard the term branding. It's been a hot word over the last few years, brands and branding. Our definition of branding essentially is that brands are the association between a product or service and the end result. This is a very common definition of branding. The interesting thing is it's not often what people think of when they think of brands. I'll use a quick example here. So let's pretend that we're going to form a company. You'll be a shareholder, I'll be a shareholder, and we're going to buy a canoe. And we're going to start a cultural tourism company. We're going to get this canoe, we're going to staff the business, and now we need to sell tickets. We need to get people in the canoe to go on canoe journeys. The reality of the canoe journey is that it's going to be cramped in the canoe, you're going to get wet, you're going to get sweaty, it's hard work, you'll get bitten by bugs and burned by the sun, you're going to be hungry and thirsty. You don't want to sell that. That's the reality, but you don't want to advertise it. No one will show up. The fact is, when you get out of the canoe, you're going to feel healthy, spiritually connected to something much larger than yourself, and the bottom line, you're just going to feel really good about yourself. That is the end result, and that is what you make your brand. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, duh, of course, but the fact is, when we work with organizations, the first instinct is to brand the reality, the product, not the end result. For example, we'll see lots of websites from organizations where they put a welcome message from the CEO on the first page. The welcome message is the reality. It's the product. It's what's inside the box. People really don't care about it. They want to know what's the end result. What is your company or organization doing that makes the world better, that makes them more money, that's providing jobs? That's the end result, and that's what you make your brand. So let's have a look at this here. What's the target audience? You probably realize this is targeted to men. And what's the end result? What are they selling? They're selling women. They're selling to men that they'll be sexually attractive and get a woman if they use this product. The fact is, in this package, it's chemicals. It's nothing particularly sexy about this at all, but they've created an entire brand based around a fictitious end result that a man who uses this product is going to be more attractive and get some great women. How about this one? Who's the target audience here? And what's the end result? With this brand, you can immediately see that it's more feminine without saying it. It doesn't say that this is a woman's product anywhere on here, but you look at it, you see the scripty font, you see that soft dove at the bottom, and you just know, even if you knew nothing about this product, you'd know that this is targeted to women compared to the Axe product that's targeted to men. Now, this end result is interesting. I mean, here they're selling beauty, and that's what a lot of women's products sell, is being beauty and beautiful and being attractive to other people. This particular brand won an award for being running this campaign, which was called Real Beauty, where basically they were trying to outdo the supermodel campaigns by saying you're beautiful the way you are. How about this brand? Does anyone know what company this is? And who is it targeted to? This product, this brand, is British Petroleum. They sell gas, essentially. And this was their logo used from 1979 until 2000. As you can tell, it's very corporate, it's very conservative, it's very sharp, pointy points and big capital letters with points on them. Definitely targeted to men, not to women. But they needed to change that brand to keep in touch with demographics. Back in 1979, who was buying gas? Well, it was mostly men. But what about in the 2000s? It's changed. There's far more women in positions where they're making income, perhaps sole incomes in the family, and they're purchasing a lot more gas and making more decisions in the family than they were in 1979. So this is what the logo looks like now. And you can see this is day and night. We've got a flower. So it went from a pointy shield to a flower, of all things. And those big, huge, pointy letters with, the knives on the ends of them that look like they could stab you, have now turned into soft, lowercase, non-pointy letters. So they moved as far away from gas as possible, and they've turned it more into like a beauty logo. The brand is more feminine, and it was a huge shift in brand appearance. Now, this is an article that I looked up from 2006 in the Wall Street Journal, and what it basically says here is that a company's identity and position statement cannot simply be pasted onto inconsistent actions. So basically, what British Petroleum did is they created this logo that looked really feminine, but they didn't change anything inside the organization. They didn't put more women in charge. They didn't make the company more environmentally friendly. They didn't make the company a safer place to work. And this publication correctly speculated that something was going to go wrong down the road, and it certainly did, when British Petroleum was at the helm of the largest oil spill disaster in the history of humankind in the Gulf of Mexico. How about this product, this brand? Who is it targeted to? And what are they selling? This one's interesting. It's targeted obviously to children. And the reason why I put it in is this cereal is one of the first examples of a product and brand that was actually developed by marketers first. So the old way of doing it is some engineer came up with this cool new cereal, like shredded wheat, and then marketers would figure out a way to sell it. This was the opposite process. Marketers said there's not enough cereals targeted to kids, and so they went and found out what kids liked, and then they asked the engineers to design a cereal that met those specifications. How about this brand? Who is it targeted to? And what's the end result? This one is interesting. It's a very, very old brand. This is the first advertisement that they ran, and you can see that the logo is largely the same, but of course if you ran this advertisement today it wouldn't quite work, would it? This is what the product looks like now. The reason why I show this example is it shows an evolution where it stayed true to its original roots of its logo, but they've evolved the brand over time to be modern. Like they've subtly changed the font, they've subtly changed the colors, they've changed obviously the packaging an incredible amount, but they've always changed it to keep it in line with the current target audience. Another very interesting thing about this and all the other logos I've shown you so far is none of them say what the product is or the end result. They imply it. So Tide doesn't say anything about laundry. It doesn't say clean laundry, which is the end result. It doesn't even say soap, which is the product which is in there. That's a very important point about branding, is it's all about the end result. It's all about the emotional response to that image and to that product, and nothing to do with what's actually in that bottle. So one of the things I often would get in these workshops where I teach this information to clients is they'd say, well, Coca-Cola's never changed their logo. Pepsi hasn't changed their logo. There are big brands out there that have never changed. And that's not true. All successful brands and identities, professional images, have evolved and changed over time. This is Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola side by side, and you can see all the changes they've made over time and the adjustments and refinements that they've done. All brands are like that. I'll just pull up this sheet here. These are some of the world's most recognized brands, and even brands like Google have gone through evolutions and change. You know, they had an exclamation mark at the end of their word mark for a little while, and then they changed the font. Microsoft has gone through changes. You look at Ford. Ford's another very popular brand that, like Tide laundry soap, has evolved a ton, but you can't really tell because the changes have been so subtle over time that you can't tell, of course, unless you put the current logo right next to a very old logo, and they look completely different. So what about this one? We've got a coffee brand here. I got another couple coffee brands, and I'll throw up Kool-Aid and Toblerone. What do these all have in common? Now, a lot of you will say food. They all have this in common. They are all brands of Kraft Foods. Now, do you know who owns Kraft? This company, Philip Morris International. They own 100% of Kraft Foods. Now, the reason why I show this is a real shocker, because a lot of people who buy Toblerone don't realize they're buying a Kraft product. I mean, if it was called Kraft Quality Swiss Chocolate, would you pay that much for a bar of chocolate? No, you wouldn't. Likewise, how many people would even buy these products if they knew that they were putting money in the pockets of Philip Morris shareholders, the infamous, I should say, cigarette company? The reason why this is so important to show you is that brands have nothing to do with the organizational chart at all. It's often the temptation of organizations and companies to create brands that are based on the organizational chart. so that a economic development would have a brand that's separate from social development, which would have a brand that's separate from, say, education. That's not always the case. Sometimes that works, often it doesn't. The best practice for creating your brands is to look at your target audience first and create brands that work for them. And Kraft Foods is a great example of how to create a very wide-ranging portfolio of brands that are all under the ownership of one company. So brands are made up of deliberate language, consistent colors, and consistent communication, and successful brands always evolve and change. So always keep your target market and target audience in mind when you're branding. That's the most important thing. Just because you love purple doesn't mean your logo should be purple. If your target audience really likes pink, it should be pink, even if you hate pink. So branding always, this is the most important thing when you're working on a brand, is to keep your target audience in mind. Speaking of target audiences, we always survey our target audiences when we do projects, and this is in general what we see. You, that being the staff working on the ground in a First Nation or company, tends to be semi-professional and more edgy, meaning you're more open to new ideas and perhaps taking some risk here and there in order to accomplish your goals. First Nations youth, who make up the majority of First Nations population, are very casual. And they tend to be in between that edgy and status quo. They haven't quite made up their mind. They don't want to see things change or things to be too radical, but they also don't want to completely be old school either. Funders, government folks, and corporate decision makers are all at the status quo professional end of the spectrum. That means they've got there, they've attained their success by doing things the way it's been done, which is status quo, following the rules, using the same forms. They're not going to bend or break too many rules. And they're very professional. They're quite comfortable in a suit and tie. And as it turns out, they have a very different comfort zone from people like yourselves and First Nations youth. So with branding, you've got to be ruthlessly consistent. Your fonts need to be consistent, your colors, your logo. If you're really consistent, you will build a successful brand. So here's an example. These are a brand we created for a project, Statlium Hydro project, and we consistently applied the brand across the board over the 5 or so months of this project, and we had a very successful outcome. We were able to generate many views and activity on Facebook and got good attendance at community meetings, and it was through consistent communication and consistent design and application of the brand. So what I want to talk to now, this is the meat and potatoes of this presentation. I want to talk about great divides. There's a lot of great divides that we see. We see the divide between First Nations people and non-First Nations people, the so-called socioeconomic gap. It's a very big divide. I also, when working with First Nations, hear about the divide between elders and youth. And what I want to talk about today is the divide between the industrial and information age generations. And it's really important when we talk about any of these topics: branding, marketing, communications, and social media. So we've got two mountains here and the big divide between them. On the left hand, we've got a guy holding a pen and paper saying nothing will replace paper and ink. On the right hand side, we've got a person holding an iPhone saying, "Pry my iPhone from my cold dead hands." Now, some of you might think there's no big deal. There's not much of a difference between loving paper and ink and doing everything digitally. But I'm going to prove otherwise in the next few slides here. It's commonly understood that our human history, our human evolution, has gone through 3 major phases over the last few thousand years. The first one was hunting and gathering. Every human society has gone through a hunting and gathering phase. The next phase after that was the agrarian age, which was basically figuring out that you can get a lot more production by cultivating and farming your food sources. The next age is the industrial age, and we've heard a lot about this. The Industrial Revolution was the big, massive shift between agrarian mentality and factory mentality. And currently, we're going through another revolution into the information age. So, with First Nations, we've gone through and we are going through all of these shifts. First Nations were hunters and gatherers and went through a massive paradigm shift when they realized that they could attain far more productivity and feed more people through agrarian practices. For example, I don't know if any of you have heard about the clam gardens that were recently rediscovered here on the west coast of British Columbia, but basically it's this underground pyramid of clam farming that was done pre-contact. So you can see how the shift would have been a pretty major one, because that underground pyramid would have been an incredible amount of work to build. And just imagine how hard it would have been to convince clam diggers to make the leap from going to the beach and digging up some clams to feed their family, to diving and landscaping underwater, planting clams, seeding clams, and then waiting for the harvest. That would have been pretty hard to do. But it happened, and that shift did happen, and we saw farming practices all over Canada in First Nations who did make that shift. And then there's that massive shift to the industrial age, moving from these tribal, community-based existences to corporations and factory-like setups that focused on churning out product faster, thousands and millions of times faster than ever before. And now we're going through this massive shift into the information age. So the industrial age is the age of pen and paper. The main value in the industrial age is stuff. Who can make the most stuff the quickest? And we've got this person with the pen and paper looking over the edge, looking at this massive leap into the information age, saying, "Are you crazy? Not gonna happen. In fact, before I even think about this, I'm going to need to hire a consultant to analyze the benefits of Facebook and provide 10 printed copies to the board before I even think about it." Meanwhile, we have a lot of people already in the information age. So here's the guy with the iPhone, and he's saying, "While you were analyzing, we elected a black president with a last name that rhymes with Osama. More recently, we got the first female premier in Alberta, and got United Airlines to fix some guy's guitar." The key word in the information age is the power of voice, the fact that people can communicate with each other millions of times faster than ever before. So this is an example of the United Airlines story. I'll just let this play for a minute.
I flew United Airlines on my way to Nebraska. The plane departed Halifax, connecting in Chicago's O'Hare. While on the ground, a passenger said from the seat behind me, "My God, they're throwing guitars out there." The band and I exchanged a look, best described as terror, at the action on the tarmac, and knowing whose projectiles these would be. So before I left Chicago, I alerted 3 employees who showed complete indifference towards me. United, United, you broke my Taylor guitar. United, just admitted I should have flown with someone else or gone by car. 'Cause United breaks guitars.
Okay, so that video was posted up on YouTube, and day 1 it had 6 hits. In day 2 had 150,000 hits. In day 3 it had 500,000 hits. Day 4 over 1 million people had looked at that video, and United Airlines stock drops 180 million. Day 5, United Airlines settles with Dave, and 1 month later, over 5 million people had seen his video. So this is an amazing story. This passenger has his very expensive guitar broken. The airline refuses to do anything. He makes this video 9 months later. It goes viral, that term meaning it spread very, very, very quickly, and it changed United Airlines' behavior. So this is how it worked in the industrial age. You had a select group of editors, decision makers, people who decided what happened, that affected billions of consumers. At a very basic level, it's the editors in a newsroom, or of a newspaper, or at a radio station, or of a website. If they decided it was okay, then you got to hear about it. If they decided it wasn't news, you didn't hear about it. Well, that's not very fair, is it? In comes social media and the new information age, and billions of consumers are now the editors, they're now the creators, and they're now sharing their ideas without filters or censors. This is a massive shift. This is the biggest shift, I would argue, in our human history so far, and has the potential and is changing the world. So we've got two bars here. You know, the industrial age, that's how productive it was. It's a little tiny stubby bar. And in the information age, ideas and information are spreading millions of times faster, and it's the biggest revolution in human history, and it is changing the world for real. So what we're really talking about is information hyperspeed. You know, the industrial age was moving at 1 kilometer an hour. Now we're working at 1,000 kilometers an hour at least. So I want to talk a little bit about First Nations people, because that's our target, that's who we work with. Most First Nations under 30 spend their spare time on the internet. Less than 10% of First Nations under the age of 30 consume information on paper. That's a very important statistic. Over the age of 30, 50% are actively online. Just for example, in Canada, over 50% of women over the age of 60 are on Facebook. So it's not purely an age difference we're seeing here, but we are still seeing this huge gap between people who are not on Facebook or not comfortable with sharing information very quickly, and they're sticking with their newspapers. But they're very clearly in the minority now. Less than 15% of Canadians still get their news from newspapers, for example. So First Nations groups, only 73% have some kind of web presence, and of the 73% that do, only 64% have their own website. So we're talking really generous terms here. This data was compiled by Animiki Incorporated. Jeff Ward and his wife did a fantastic job surveying all First Nations and getting this information and sharing it with us. So we've got the person with the pen and paper saying, we're doing great. You know, we've got 63% of First Nations with their own website. We're doing awesome. Well, let's look a little bit deeper into those numbers. Of the 63%, only 19% are updated at least weekly, and almost 1/3 haven't been updated in over a year. We need to do more, obviously, says the person with the iPhone. So let's talk a little bit about social media. Social media, how well are First Nations communities doing and First Nations organizations doing using social media? Well, 12% have blogs or news feeds. 6% have email lists or electronic newsletters. 4% are on Facebook. And 2% are on Twitter. So the young person there with the iPhone is just saying abandon ship, like this is not good enough. When you're looking at over 3/4 of First Nations being on Facebook and only 4% of First Nations communities and organizations using Facebook to communicate with members, there's a big gap and a big lost opportunity to engage membership. So again, this is a great divide. Now if you're over on the left-hand side here saying, well, what do I do? How do we close this divide? This is overwhelming. The solution is quite simple. Hire me, empower me, and let's change the world, says the young person. What you need to do to close this gap is find someone who's already in the information age, already making a difference, and empowered, and empower them to get your message out there to help you accomplish your goals. And just watch your goals become accomplished. Watch your business and your organization take off and be amazing. So social media spreads messages thousands and millions of times faster than before. Social media gives people voice, and social media is changing the world. This is an article I found online. It says, Arab Spring really was a social media revolution. After analyzing more than 3 million tweets, gigabytes of YouTube content, and thousands of blog posts, a new study has concluded that the Arab Spring truly was fueled by social media. And this article just makes me laugh, published September 13th, because the industrial media complex, the mainstream media, it took them 6 months to confirm what young people already knew, that the Arab Spring was fueled by social media. It was a phenomenon of social media right away. It didn't become a phenomenon 6 months later when the analysts figured it out. It already was. So if you want to be part of the revolution, get with the people who are already there and get in the loop. Don't wait 6 months for the darn report to tell you what a lot of people already know. This is a more close to home example that happened recently, and it was the selection of the next leader of the Conservative Party in Alberta. Here are the three banners for the three top, let's call them contestants, for the Conservative leadership. Doug Horner, Gary Marr, and Alison Redford. Now, Gary Marr was chosen by the establishment. And in the industrial age, this is what happened. The establishment picked who was going to be the next leader. And then they might go through some kind of convention to formalize it. But by and large, they made the choice, and that's what happened. And that's been going on for over 100 years. But Alison Redford was chosen by the people. She only had 2 endorsements from MLAs out of their caucus. And that happened because of social media, because people were given a voice. She had the same strategist that accomplished the same feat in Calgary, got a complete underdog mayor elected as mayor of Calgary, and he did the same thing in Alberta with the premier, Alison Redford, by focusing on people with a voice in the social media field and getting them to tell all their friends, who in turn would tell all their friends, who in turn would tell all their friends, and pretty soon you had tens of thousands of Conservative members who were behind this woman and made sure that she got elected. Here's another example for you. This is a very close to home example. This is Hazelton, where I choose to live. And a young lady there loves animals, and there's a lot of neglected animals not being taken care of. So she started this organization called Dogs Deserve Better, and she runs it almost entirely, the communication over Facebook. So here's a album of what's called happy endings, so animals that were successfully fostered out. But it's quite amazing what happens here. Animals that are up for adoption get posted, and they very quickly find a foster home, or even get adopted or sent out to the city. And this is something that I'm just astounded by, like how successful and how much she's been able to do on her own on Facebook, how many animals she's been able to rescue, save, and place with their forever homes, as she calls them. So here's a recent example. And there's one more thing I want to share about social media. Social media is about justice. This is a really, really core, very important concept. Now, there's a lot of stories on why a murder of crows is called a murder. And one of the stories I heard is that when they get together socially, if one of them steps out of line and is disrespectful, does something it's not supposed to do, it gets killed by the other crows. Now, human beings have an innate sense of justice. It's something we're born with. It's a very strong core of our being. And scientists and researchers and therapists have all basically said, it's innate and it's there because we are a tribal people, and we wouldn't be able to get to where we've gone, where we are, without this sense of justice, right and wrong, that lives inside of us. So here's a Canadian example. This young lady, you might remember her, she faked having cancer in order to raise money for herself. And in the old days, this might have been news for a week, maybe, but we're in the age of social media, and she didn't become a loved celebrity because of this crime. People online were furious at her dishonesty and her behavior, and they pretty much lynched her online. Just totally went after her, like that murder of crows, going after the crow that steps out of line. Here's another example on a more positive story. This terminally ill boy was going on his way to Disneyland, and Air Canada broke his wheelchair. So he arrived in the States and his wheelchair was unusable. His auntie posted a tweet disgusted that Air Canada wasn't going to fix it right away and wasn't going to do anything to make it right. So something happened. She put it on Twitter, and the airline found itself in the eye of a social media storm after breaking the boy's $15,000 wheelchair. So Air Canada first told the family they'd have to wait till Monday to get his chair, but by Thursday afternoon, and after a massive social media outburst sparked by his aunt, the airline returned his fixed chair and offered him a free trip to Disney World. I mean, this is just so obvious that this was wrong. Like, you break a $15,000 chair, the guy's terminally ill, he's trying to get to Disneyland, and you ruin it. And instead of doing whatever you can to fix it, you brush it aside. That is nothing new. This has been going on forever through the industrial age. What is new is that social media now makes it possible to punish this kind of behavior very, very, very quickly. And when Air Canada realized that within a day there was tens of thousands of outraged Canadians, they very, very quickly moved to fix it. So the reason why I mention these stories is that First Nations issues are justice issues. First Nations issues are justice issues. First Nations are facing incredible historical wrongs. And it reminds me of a story of one of my clients who's trying to get land back that was illegally taken from them. It was granted to them through a reserve and then taken illegally by the government. And they're trying to get it back or trying to get compensation for that, and it still hasn't happened. A guy comes in to deliver water, a non-native person from the community, from the surrounding community, and he says, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And so someone in the department explains, "Well, our land got taken away, this is what happened, showed him the map." And 5 minutes later he said, "This is an outrage. I cannot believe I'm living in a community, I can't believe I'm living on land that was taken away in such a way and that you haven't been compensated." There is a population of people out there who are just waiting to be outraged about First Nations justice issues. So the more you get online, the more you start telling your story and getting it out there, people will know that it's wrong and will help you set it right. So how does this all fit? And this is the last few slides of my presentation. Thanks for sticking with me this long. We see this a lot. We see people say we should have a website, we should have a Facebook page, we should have a Twitter page or a new computer or a blog. And the problem is that you should never adopt technology or information age tools for the sake of it, because I don't want you saying, okay, let's start a Facebook page because Jacob said we should. That results in disconnected technology. So you've probably seen things like this, websites that get launched, they look great, but they're never updated. Or new equipment that is purchased but is not used to its potential. Let's say the boss gets a new computer and all he's doing is using it to check email, and the new computer's no faster at checking email than the old computer. So what you need to do is find out where the technology overlaps with your goals, your audience, and your strategy. So never do technology for the sake of technology. Always make sure it's fitting and it's working. As a rule, it needs to make your life easier. That's the question you need to ask. When you're looking at doing anything technology related, information age related, ask yourself that question. Is it going to make my life easier? Is it going to accomplish my goals? Is it going to motivate my target audience? Is it going to send the right messages? So for example, we use a fantastic system. I highly recommend it. It's free and it works like this. We all know how to send email. Email is something we do very easily all day long. So what if you could send one email, and that email would update your website and your blog automatically, as well as your Facebook page, your Twitter feed, and if you attach a video to your email, it'll put it on YouTube for you. This is an example of technology making your life easier. One email, the subject line becomes your headline on Facebook, your headline on Twitter, the name of your video on YouTube, the headline of your news feed in your website and your blog. And the body of your email becomes the content in all those places. Anything you attach goes to the appropriate place. Photos go to a photo gallery, photos go into a photo album on Facebook, all automatically. So you don't have to remember your username and login for every single one of these services. You just send that email and it's done. This is another thing I see where you start thinking about the top of the mountain, which is, let's say in this case, a website, business cards, flyers, doing meetings, having some displays done, without thinking about how to get there. Now you need to think of both, of course. You need to start with the end in mind, and you need to know, okay, how am I going to get there? Who's going to update the website? Who's going to edit content? Who's going to approve the business cards? And who do you trust? Now this is a really important process to go through, and I highly recommend engaging and hiring people who are already in the information age to help you with this process. You can have systems that do both, that reach out in the industrial age way and the information age way. For example, you can do a newsletter online that's tied into an online database that you don't have to create, it's already there. Any subscribers, you add to it manually or they add themselves. And when you do a newsletter, you do it online in that system and it automatically emails out to all your subscribers, and you can print out a paper copy and mail it out to your paper subscribers. That's making your life easier. It's an integrated system and it reaches both the people who just like reading on paper and the information age digital screen people. So I hope you liked the presentation. I've reached the end of it. I want to thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, please contact Copper Moon and we'll be very happy to help you. Have a great day.